Hey parents, ever notice your little one reaching for daddy while giving mommy the cold shoulder? Or maybe your baby lights up for grandma but fusses with everyone else. Well, hold on to your rattles because what I'm about to tell you might just flip your world upside down. That favoritism, it's not just normal, it could be a sign your baby's developing some seriously impressive skills. I know, sounds crazy, but stick with me because I'm about to share a wild ride that changed everything I thought I knew about babies and their favorites. It all started on a typical Tuesday morning. I was trying to get my 8-month-old daughter ready for the day, but she was having none of it. Every time I reached for her, she'd wail like a banshee and twist away, reaching desperately for her father. I felt my heart sink. Was I a terrible mother? Had I done something wrong? Little did I know this moment would lead me down a rabbit hole of research and revelations that would completely transform how I viewed my daughter's behavior. And trust me, what I discover will change how you see your baby's preferences too. So are you ready to uncover the surprising truth about baby favoritism? Let's dive in. I stood there fighting back tears as my husband scooped up our giggling daughter. She immediately snuggled into his chest, all smiles and coos. The contrast was like a knife to my heart. I'd been the one up all night with her, the one who fed her, bathed her, sang to her. How could she prefer him so blatantly? As my husband headed downstairs with our little trader, I collapsed onto the bed, feeling like a failure. But then something inside me snapped. I was a problem solver, darn it. I wasn't going to let this defeat me. I needed answers. I grabbed my phone and started furiously researching. Why does my baby prefer dad? I typed, fingers flying across the screen. As I scrolled through countless articles, our carding began to emerge. And let me tell you, it wasn't at all what I expected. You see, for years, experts had been telling parents that babies shouldn't show strong preferences. It was thought to be a sign of insecure attachment or even poor parenting. But new research was turning that idea on its head. I came across a fascinating study by Mary Ainsworth and her colleagues that suggests infants who form secure attachments with their primary caregivers may exhibit advanced cognitive development later in childhood. The researchers found that babies who showed clear preferences for certain caregivers were more likely to develop strong problem-solving skills and social competence as they grew older. But why? Well, it turns out that when babies choose favorites, they're actually flexing some pretty impressive mental muscles. They're observing, categorizing, and making decisions based on their experiences. It's like they're little scientists conducting experiments to figure out who best meets their needs. As I read on, my guilt began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of fascination. Could it be that my daughter's preference for her father wasn't a rejection of me, but a sign of her budding intelligence? I was so engrossed in my reading that I almost didn't hear the crash from downstairs. My heart leaped into my throat as I raced down the steps, fearing the worst. What I saw when I reached the kitchen stopped me in my tracks. There was my husband, covered head to toe in baby cereal, looking sheepish. Our daughter sat in her high chair, howling at the top of her lungs, tiny fists clenched in rage. "I think she wants you," he said weakly. I scooped her up, and she immediately calmed, burying her face in my neck. And just like that, the tables had turned. But now, armed with my new knowledge, I saw the situation in a completely different light. This wasn't about rejection or playing favorites. It was about my daughter learning to navigate her world and her relationships. And that realization opened up a whole new way of thinking about baby favoritism. You see, when babies show preferences, they're not just being fickle. They're actually developing crucial social skills. By choosing different caregivers for different needs, they're learning about human relationships and social dynamics. Think about it this way. Maybe your baby prefers mom for comfort when they're upset, but dad is the go-to for playtime. Or perhaps grandma is the favorite for story time, while grandpa is best for outdoor adventures. By making these choices, babies are learning that different people have different strengths and roles. This kind of social understanding is incredibly important for a child's development. It lays the groundwork for future relationships, teaching them that people aren't interchangeable and that it's okay to seek out different individuals for different needs. But here's where it gets really interesting. Remember that Ainsworth study I mentioned? Well, it turns out that baby favoritism might also be linked to early decision-making skills. When a baby shows a preference, they're essentially making a choice based on past experiences and current needs. It's like they're saying, based on what I know, this person is the best choice for what I need right now. That's some pretty sophisticated thinking for someone who can't even tie their own shoes, right? Now, I know what you might be thinking. That's all well and good, but what about the parent who's not the favorite? How do we deal with those hurt feelings? Trust me, I've been there. And I'll be honest, it's not always easy, but understanding the science behind favoritism can make a world of difference. Instead of seeing it as a rejection, try to view it as a sign of your baby's developing mind. Here's a little trick I learned from my Jamaican grandmother. She always said, "Pick-me love change like weather." In other words, a child's preferences can be as changeable as the weather. And you know what? Science backs her up. Research in child development indicates that it's common for infants and toddlers to exhibit cyclical favoritism between parents. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, a child's preference can shift based on developmental stages, daily routines, or which parent is more involved in certain activities at the time. So by recognizing this pattern, you can ride out the tough times, knowing that your turn as the favorite will come around again. But what if the favoritism seems persistent? Don't worry, I've got some strategies for you. First, try to identify what it is about the favorite person that your baby is drawn to. Is it their playfulness, their calm demeanor? Once you've figured it out, you can try incorporating some of those elements into your own interactions. For example, if your baby loves how animated grandpa is during playtime, try ramping up your own energy during your play sessions. You're not trying to become a carbon copy of the favorite person, but rather expanding your own repertoire of interactions. Another great tip is to create special one-on-one time with your baby. This gives you the opportunity to bond without competition or distractions. Maybe you have a special bedtime routine or a morning ritual that's just for the two of you. Remember, consistency is key. Even if your baby seems uninterested at first, keep at it. Babies thrive on routine, and over time, they'll come to associate that special time with you. Now, here's a strategy that might surprise you. Sometimes, the best way to handle favoritism is to embrace it. If your baby clearly wants the other parent for a particular task, let it happen without feeling guilty or upset. This not only respects your baby's choices, but also gives you a break. Parenting is a marathon, not a sprint, and taking turns being the favorite can help prevent burnout. But what about when favoritism extends beyond the immediate family? Maybe your baby lights up for the neighbor but cries with your best friend. This can be awkward, to say the least. Here's where a little Caribbean wisdom comes in handy. In many Caribbean cultures, it's common for children to be raised by a village, not just their parents. This means babies are exposed to a wide variety of caregivers from an early age. Taking a page from this approach, try exposing your baby to different people in various contexts. This helps them learn that relationships can be diverse and that it's okay to connect with different people in different ways. If your baby's particularly wary of certain people, don't force the issue. Instead, try parallel play. Have the person sit nearby and interact with you while your baby plays. Over time, your little one may warm up as they see that this person is safe and fun. Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground here, but there's one more crucial point I want to make. While baby favoritism can be a positive sign of development, it's important to ensure that your child is forming secure attachments overall. A secure attachment doesn't mean your baby never shows preferences. Rather, it means they feel safe exploring those preferences because they know their primary caregivers will always be there for them. So how can you foster secure attachment while still allowing for favorites? It's all about responsiveness. When your baby cries or reaches for you, respond consistently and warmly, even if you're not the favorite of the moment. This builds trust and security, giving your baby the confidence to explore other relationships. And here's a pro tip: narrate what's happening. If your baby reaches for dad, Instead of you could say something like, "Oh, you want daddy right now. That's okay, mommy's here too." This acknowledges your baby's choice while reassuring them of your presence and love. As we wrap up this journey through the surprising world of baby favoritism, I want you to remember one thing: your baby's preferences are not a reflection of your worth as a parent. They're a sign of your child's growing mind, their developing social skills, and their budding decision-making abilities. So the next time your little one reaches for someone else, take a deep breath and smile. You're witnessing a little scientist at work, exploring their world and their relationships. And that, my friends, is truly amazing. If you found this information helpful, why not check out our video on why your baby needs to fall? Trust me, it's a game changer. Until next time, keep loving those little ones, preferences and all.